Good afternoon. If I say good morning, will that make us feel like we're just getting started? I'm gonna have you do something really quick. I know we had a chance to stand up, but stand up really quick. We're gonna do just a little bit of calisthenics before we get started here. We're gonna do some push-ups. Yeah, I know, these are push-ups.
Oh, yeah.
That's it, I know. Touch your toes, which just means this. I'm not bending over. And then face stretches. I like to do these a lot with kids especially. So just take your face, physically just stretch it out. Make faces with it, all that. Open your eyes real big and all that. Makes us feel like we're waking up again, yes? And then you can have a seat. Well, first of all, I was sitting back there listening to Brian thinking, and listening to everybody who's spoken today and thinking, this is kind of a typical experience for me in that I feel like anytime I'm asked to go speak or sing somewhere, I leave the event feeling like I have been ministered to more than I, come with thinking I have anything to offer, and then I feel like I'm the one who receives the blessing. So thank you, Tracy, for allowing me to be here and share just a little bit of my journey with you. I know it takes a lot to pull off an event like this. It's a lot, so I know she's probably been working tirelessly. I'm married to Perry, who is a marketing director at Cornhusker Bank, and we have 4 kids. Hunter is my oldest, and he is the choir teacher at Standing Bear High School, and kind of started off a new adventure there. He actually worked at Norris High School, where I was one of his accompanists for 4 years, so he was my boss, which, if you ever want to have a little adventure in life, work for one of your kids. So we had a great time. My daughter Hannah is 27. She works for Union Bank in their HSA department kind of thing. I have a son, Harrison, who is a touring musician and songwriter, and he recently moved back here from Nashville. He was in Nashville for a couple of years, but got married this summer and decided that he can live a little cheaper here and travel from here. So it's been fun to watch his journey. And then my youngest is Houston, and he is in his last year of school at Grand Canyon University in Phoenix. So we are nearing the very, very end of our parenting students phase, and we're about to have a completely empty nest. Although at one point or another, all of my adult children have come back to live with us after they've been out of college. So you never know what's gonna happen. It's all good, it's all good. I wanna go back a few years to December 31st of 2019. That is the day that we moved my mother-in-law in with us for what would be the final 6 weeks of her life. She was 94 years old. She lived a full and wonderful life until cancer and old age took her from us. And I think at the time, we thought that that was probably one of the hardest things we would go through in 2020. Yeah, exactly. A month later, the world turned upside down, and life as we knew it was definitely looking different. For the next 9 months, our family would navigate all of the changes that all of us had to go through. There were obviously many struggles, including most of us getting COVID and dealing with that. It was my youngest senior year of high school, so that was not a lot of fun. My college student child was having not a great year, and my 2 older children, like I said, one was a teacher and one was in youth ministry, and navigating those years with them as well was tough, just dealing with youth and all the things that they had to go through when COVID hit. For the most part, though, I felt like we came through 2020 pretty unscathed compared to the losses that a lot of people had to experience. That is until December 31st, 2020. In an attempt to kind of start the new year, I thought, okay, 2021, 2020 sucked. 2021 is going to be a great year. So I thought, I'm going to go and get all these appointments done that I'd been neglecting for years. So I went to the dentist, and I went to my gynecologist, and I had my first colonoscopy. That was fun. A yearly physical, which never took place yearly, but I thought, oh, I'm gonna go again. And I finally, after 5 years of not going, had a mammogram. And all my appointments went great. Everything came back wonderful, including my yearly physical where nothing was detected. And it was the mammogram that came back with the news. And at 4:39 p.m. on New Year's Eve of 2020, that's when I got the news that I received my diagnosis of breast cancer. Now, someone asked earlier, what did you do when you first got the news? I know there are all kinds of responses to what our first reaction is. And my first reaction when I received that news was I went down to my basement where my studio is and I wrote a song. I, of course, told my husband and kids first, and then I went down to the basement and I wrote a song. It might seem a little strange that in that moment I would feel a burst of creativity and want to pour out my thoughts into something like that I would go choose to sit at a piano and play those 88 keys and type words into my computer. But doing that was my first instinct because that is the one thing that I know to do with every experience, every emotion, every prayer, every dream, and every nightmare. It is the thing that I know to do when life doesn't make sense, when life is hard, when I'm hopeful, and when I have something to say that I think just might be of value to somebody else. I do that because I believe that one of the most significant things a person can do when they are walking into and through a season of darkness is to make something. To somehow shift our thoughts from whatever our current circumstances are, and instead engage our hearts and our minds and our bodies in a way that we literally create something that wasn't there before. So why is that so important? What happens when we choose to create? What is the big deal about creativity in regards to cancer, of all things? How can we possibly change the trajectory of our outlook and our experience after hearing the words, "You have cancer," by making something? Well, I think we need to go back to the beginning, as in the beginning. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness. The very first verb in the Bible is created. It is the Hebrew word bara. The very first action that we see God doing is making something. But not only did he make something, he acknowledged the darkness. Darkness was over the face of the deep, and after he acknowledged the darkness, he said, "Let there be light." When we respond to the darkness that we happen to be walking into and walking through, when we respond to that by tapping into our creativity and making something, we have an opportunity to separate light from the darkness. We have the ability to create something and call it good in a season where maybe it's tougher to see something that's good. So what happens when we find ourselves in the dark place and we make the choice to make something? What we're really doing in that moment is summoning hope. We are ordering it to be present. When something is summoned, we are ordering it to be present. We are demanding that it shows up. And I have found that to be true through the act of creativity, that we are demanding hope to show up. One of my favorite authors is Anne Lamott. And she says, hope begins in the dark. The stubborn hope that if you just show up and try to do the right thing, the dawn will come. You wait and you watch, and you don't give up. When hope shows up, it is the light that scatters the darkness. And I love the stories that Allie shared earlier of her friends who, they're all stories of hope. They're all stories of people who have dug deep inside of themselves and summoned hope and demanded that it show up and do its job to show light that scatters the darkness. Sometimes that light is big and bright and beautiful, and sometimes it's small and soft and barely gives us enough to just see a few inches in front of us. But however big or small it is, the instant it appears, darkness is separated from light, and we can see. In my case, hope has found its way into my songs. Songs that express joy and lament, gratitude and grief. Songs that share my own journey and encourage others to keep pressing on as they walk their own paths. So my question to you is, what about you? What can you do to summon hope and separate the light from the darkness? Now, when I go out and speak to people about creativity, inevitably I look around the room and somebody's going, well, sure, you write songs, you write books, you make whatever, and that's not me, I'm not creative. But I heard a definition the other day, which I thought was so great. I was listening to some podcast. I'm a bit of a podcast junkie. And their definition of creativity was finding solutions. And so even as Coach was up here talking, I thought, well, that's what a coach does. A coach finds solutions. You have to be creative in your job. You have to think up plays that are going to work, right? Apparently, we should have thought some of those up today for Nebraska. I wasn't paying attention, but whatever. Apparently, we lost. I know. I thought the game was at 2:30. What do I know? My son texted me. I'm like, oh, it's over. Okay, well, good thing I didn't watch. Anyway, creativity is finding solutions. Every person in here has had to find solutions for something along their journey. If you are one of those people who is sitting out there and thinking, well, I'm not creative, I would like to be bold enough to just tell you that I think you're wrong. In fact, when I look around this room, and I look at each one of you, I see a room full of creative people. Some of you may not be too sure about that, but some of you might need to think back to when you were kids. Do you remember those days when we actually got bored? What a gift. Sometimes I think that's a forgotten skill these days, is to let yourself be bored. When we used to use our imagination and we would let creativity take over, whatever form that looked like. Picasso said, all children are creative. The problem is to remain an artist when they grow up. For whatever reason, whether it's busyness or fear or insecurity, so many people stop doing whatever it is that brings them joy and helps them express themselves. My own writing journey started when I was probably 6 or 7 years old, and I would sit down and I would copy word for word Curious George books. And then I would take them to my mom and I would tell her that I wrote a book. I had a lot to learn about plagiarism apparently at that point. I did figure that out. Eventually, though, words and melodies became my thing. There are a lot of things I'm not very good at. But when I face the darkness armed with a pen and a piano, I know that that is my thing. It is my weapon of choice in chasing away the darkness. It is how I separate light from darkness. One of my favorite books of all time is Harold and the Purple Crayon. Do you remember that book? Yes. I remember going to Bethany Library as a kid and checking that book out repeatedly and just being enamored with it. If you are not familiar with Harold, let me tell you a little bit about him. He's a small, bald, man-child thing. I think it's a kid, but he looks like an adult to me too. He's always dressed in like a white onesie or something like that. That's what it looks like to me. Now that I look at it, I'm like, this is just strange, but I loved it. It looks kind of like pajamas. In every book that I recall, Harold would start the book going for a walk in the moonlight. And as he walked, he carried with him his purple crayon. Remember those big, chunky purple crayons? That's to me what that looked like. And as Harold goes through the story, he creates his own story. He draws his own adventure. He draws his own beauty. He draws dragons and sidewalks and stairs and trees and buildings and kings and clowns, rockets, animals, and more. He draws things that make him feel afraid, and he draws things that make him feel safe. The books usually end with Harold safely back home, having successfully tamed a lion or traveled through space, or having fought off one of those dragons. What I love about Harold, and this is the lesson that I've learned from him, is that he took his one thing and he did what he does best. He drew. All he had was his purple crayon, and he took it and he created an amazing life for himself. It wasn't always easy, especially when he drew a steep hill or several flights of stairs. It wasn't always safe, like when he drew the ocean, but he didn't have a boat. Thankfully, he drew one, and he climbed in, and he set sail with the moon. One of my favorite stories is when he drew himself a tightrope to walk, just to prove that he could do it. He successfully skipped along the tightrope, and then he fell off. He then quickly drew a curve, which happened to be the trunk of an elephant, for him to land on safe and sound. So, what is your purple crayon? Everybody has one. What is the one thing that you can do to bring about joy and light and beauty and adventure, and most importantly, to summon hope and separate the light from the darkness? I would bet as I look around this room, I am looking at poets and carpenters, gardeners and chefs, business owners, musicians, and I would add attorneys and coaches. I see dancers and seamstresses, writers and painters. I see a room full of people who have something in them that can be used to summon hope and separate the light from the darkness. Now, I want you to do those things. I want you to use your purple crayon, whatever that is, because I do believe it will bring you joy, and I believe that you will create beauty and adventure for your life. But that's not really the main reason that I want you to do that. I've heard it said that art is not finished until it is shared, and I believe that to be true. Again, I think we could look back to the beginning when God created, 5 days worth of things, and he kept saying, it's good, it's good, it's good. But until he created somebody to share that with and to experience all that he had made, it wasn't until then that he said, it's very good. So I would challenge you that the world is desperately looking for hope. It's not just people who are dealing with cancer. It's people dealing with all the everyday stuff that life has to throw at us. They're desperately looking for hope, and whatever it is that you have to create may be the perfect vessel to communicate hope like nothing else can. I write songs. They are my anthems of hope. They are what I create and raise up high for all the world to hear. I wish all the world would hear them. They don't, so that's why I'm a poor songwriter. Maybe someday, maybe the whole world will hear them, but for now, it's all good. I don't think songs solve problems, but I do think they have power. They have power to move people and inspire people and comfort people, and they help separate the light from the darkness. So, what is your anthem? Whether it's writing a song, or baking banana bread, or sending a handwritten note to someone, cutting flowers from your garden and taking them to a neighbor, building a shed, starting a business, or painting a canvas. I beg you to raise up your anthem, whatever that is. As someone who has needed reminding in recent years, and I have needed people to raise up their anthem for me, I promise you that there is hope in a beautifully detailed crocheted blanket sent to me from a friend in Tennessee. There's hope in a greeting card lovingly stamped with a personalized message sent to me from a friend in Firth. There's hope in a pan of homemade beef enchiladas. And I truly believe that somebody somewhere needs you to do your creative thing with your purple crayon, whatever that is, to bring them out of a pit and bring them hope and separate the light from the darkness from them. I want to sing a song for you before I'm done, and I hate it when people get up and singers get up and they make excuses for how they're about to sing, but I'm going to do that because I haven't sung in months because I've been sick and COVID and surgeries and stuff have kind of limited my capacity to sing, but I think you're a pretty forgiving audience, yes? So if I cough and hack through this, you don't need to applaud yet, really, you haven't heard it, so just wait. But I want to sing it to you because this is really what inspired an entire book, and what I felt like if I could say one thing to people about using their creativity, this is what I would want to say. So let me get this set up here. Hang on one second. Promise I'm not texting anyone here.
Bluetooth. Bluetooth connected.
I'm really loud when I sing, but I'm going to use this anyway. So if you start to cover your ears, I know I'm being too loud. How do words and melodies offer any remedy to weary souls and breaking hearts? How do verses and refrains calm a fear or soothe an ache or shine a light into the dark? Well, I cannot explain this mystery, but I've seen it and I felt it, and it seems to me that hope deserves an anthem, 'cause sometimes it's a song that keeps someone believing there's a reason to go on, and people need reminding something good is gonna happen, so we sing. We sing 'cause hope deserves an anthem. Seems like everywhere I turn, shouts of anger, doubt, and hurt are ringing out for all to hear. But how much louder should the sound of love and grace and truth resound, till echoes of despair soon disappear, and hope deserves an anthem, 'cause sometimes it's a song that keeps someone believing there's a reason to go on, and people need reminding something good is gonna happen, so we sing. We sing 'cause hope deserves an anthem. to tell someone that they can breathe again. But if this is music you're meant to compose, then I will sing it loud enough so everybody knows that hope deserves an anthem. 'Cause sometimes it's a song that keeps someone believing there's a reason to go on, and people need reminding something good is gonna happen. So we sing, 'cause hope deserves an anthem. And people need reminding something good is gonna happen. So we sing and paint and write. We sing 'cause hope deserves an anthem. I hope that you are thinking and considering even now what it is that maybe you haven't done in a while that you could do for the sake of separating the light and the darkness for somebody else. Thanks so much.